jump into things. Awesome. So today we've got our first Friday talk. So currently in week 2 of the Prod MBA, and we have Thibaut Souyris here, who is founder of Sales Lab. How's it going, Thibaut?
Doing great, thanks.
Awesome. Just maybe give everyone a very quick introduction to who you are, what you specialize in.
Yeah, so my name is Thibaut Souyris, as you said with your British accent. I'm actually from France and Switzerland, so that's why it's very complicated for a lot of people to say my name properly. But you said Thibaut right, so that's good. So I'm the CEO and founder of Sales Labs, which is like a sales training, coaching, and consulting company, and I focus on B2B sales and helping people simply start more conversations with modern tools and close deals faster. And so I do that through some kind of training, can be online or on site. And I also consult founders and executive teams so they can understand which kind of organization or sales organization they need to put in place. And so one thing I'm gonna do is just drop my LinkedIn profile in the chat so you can add me, and you'll actually be able to see about what I'm doing. I post every day about sales. And so I think that's
great,
yeah.
a really good. I'll post also in our Slack channel, but I think very good reference for everyone listening to look at good LinkedIn strategy.
Yeah, exactly.
I've learned quite a lot from as well.
And I'd say so. I've started posting regular content. So that's one of my commitment for 2020 is to post every single day of the week, and it actually took a very good turn. I never expected that. So now I got I think around 9,000 followers and great engagement, a lot of leads coming from posting on LinkedIn and talking about sales. And so I get often approached, like that was the case with Henry, asking to give my point of view on stuff about sales, which is amazing because I really like giving my point of view and stuff. So yeah. That's
one of the reasons why I wanted to get you specifically in is somebody that I think the core learning really of the Prod MBA is not. You can learn all of these frameworks and on paper skills, right? Do a traditional MBA, there's books, everything out there.
Yeah.
But actually, I think getting what actually works in practice, right now in 2020, is really, really, really valuable.
Yeah.
And also, as we're getting we're getting these guys to do cold outreach. Most people have never done this.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people treat it as sort of a sales thing. It's over here, and we're over here in product. And yeah, I think just seeing there are results from this and it works is really valuable. Yeah. Just on that, how do you, one thing I've mentioned to the guys in some of the video training has been things like if you get your offer right, your headline on LinkedIn, as you said, people organically come to you. How often have you found that is the case versus sort of direct outreach to them?
So, I mean, the outline is whenever you see something on LinkedIn, someone or in either on your computer or your mobile phone, you'll always see a picture, first name, last name, and a headline. And so the headline is not really what's gonna attract people on your profile. It's just your profile will pop in different suggestions based on the algorithm. And then if it says top 50 MVP, whatever crap that talks about you, people are going to maybe look on it. But if you say something where you say what you're doing for who, then it's a lot clearer. So if you look at my profile, I say I train and coach B2B sales teams to start more conversations. That's what I'm saying. So whenever, I get these kind of things and people land on my profile very often. And the thing is, you still need to produce content. You still need to reach out to people, but you get a lot more people where you see found you through homepage or found you through similar people. I get quite a few, but I'd say what drives traffic is really building content on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's good to know. There's something we'll come to actually in week 4 with our guys. Yeah, I think that's such a good point. That is, I think traditionally, right, everyone has sort of product manager as their LinkedIn headline. But if you are ultimately, I think a really good point. People don't really care what you do.
Yeah,
they're not interested. They just want to know, what am I going to get out of this? So I think your one's a great example, crystal clear. You don't mention anything about, how good you are at doing this. Simply, I help you do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
There's a guy, I don't know if I can't remember his name, but there's a guy on LinkedIn that I have he's got thousands of followers, but just purely posts sort of comedy posts. And his headline, firstly, he's out of work, so he's been fired. He's obviously not very good at whatever he does. But he then says, I'm the MVP of sales. I mean, you're probably not the MVP of sales if
Yeah.
not at
The
sales.
thing is, in French, we have a saying which is la culture, c'est comme la confiture. Moins on en a, plus on l'étale. So I'm going to translate that. It's like culture is like jam. The less you have, the more you spread it. And it's the same thing with acknowledgements or whatever. When you see top 1%, MVP plus 25, whatever things, and that you see these things lined up, you know who you're actually facing. So that's really something I really recommend is don't put these things, because if you call yourself an expert, that's one thing. But if others call you an expert, that's way more powerful. So I think it's super important to just be humble and authentic, because we're all tired of seeing these guys who in front of rented Ferraris or rented private jets that are showing you how to get rich fast. It's not that, that's really not how it works. So I really always recommend just to, leave all these things out. No one cares about what you want, what price you want. Just everyone cares about the results you provide.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean that's also a tension that from my perspective, sort of building the program I've had is, so we sort of always, there's this tension that I know both Daniel and Daniele have mentioned of, initially we were trying to do this cold outreach just to simply answer the question, like, are people willing to even engage with this offer, right, with our headline? So that's been the initial approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what we're now doing, particularly as we move into week 4, is like, how do we actually build trust? So exactly as you said, like, what are strategies? So you mentioned, for example, like posting on LinkedIn. Maybe give us, for people listening, some specific, for example, I know I've read a lot of your stuff on LinkedIn approach, but what specific, 3 things could they do to build up trust with their, future potential customers?
So you mean building up trust so they accept your invitation, or once the invitation has been accepted?
I suppose that the end goal is to, let's use LinkedIn specifically. If the end goal is to get someone through to a conversation or even through to your website, for example,
okay,
how do you approach that?
So the thing is I think it's really great to take this approach of collecting data before even trying to build a product or whatever. That's like really what I recommend. But if you want to build trust, I think you need to make sure your profile is optimized for that. So as I said, your headline has to be clear on what you're doing. Then your about section has to also clearly say what you're doing, what kind of results you're providing. For example, you will include a bunch of testimonials from people who have been working with you, and then you explain what you're doing, how you're doing it, and what results typically people get. So that's one thing. The other thing is I would say it's posting regular content is one great way to actually build rapport and get people to actually kind of see credibility. And another really quick win is to identify thought leaders and influencers in your space and then do collabs with them. Super easy. For example, you say, okay, I want to do like, I don't know, a weekly or monthly Zoom interview. And then what you're going to do is find thought leaders, invite them on your show. And thought leaders, that's what they love. That's why I'm here too, because I get like a free exposure to 9 to 10 different new people. And, it's like, I like doing that. It's something that's pretty cool. And it's always very, when you're at the center of something, you're invited as a guest. It's always really cool. So a lot of people, when they're influencers, thought leaders or whatever, that they're always super happy to do that. So that's really what I would do, because whenever you do that, people automatically associate your name with this person. And so this is super good for credibility, because then you kind of poach the network, and then they say, oh, this guy is associated with this girl. And then, the network of this girl, for example, that kind of can start becoming yours. People start following you. And then there's this kind of thing. And very fast, if you do that regularly, then people start just asking you stuff, and they directly assume that you have had a very long relationship with this person, and that you're 100% like endorsed by them. And so that's one great way to do that, I would say.
Yeah, I've noticed stuff like, if I've got a few LinkedIn connections that like, top Silicon Valley tech people, just, now and again, I'll post on one of the articles or something. You see a huge boost in traffic. As you said, there's an assumption that, hey, if I'm the connection, then, we're best friends, or that I'm on an equal level with this person, which is obviously not the case. But yeah, it adds credit. It's a quick way to get credibility, right?
Yeah, I'd be careful tagging people like without asking them. So it's important. Basically, the best thing you can do to before doing that is to comment and engage with these thought leaders. So you comment on their posts, really important to comment, not just like comment and do a thoughtful comment.
Yeah.
For example, if they do a video, you're going to summarize 3 key points in the video, because that's going to increase the accessibility to their content. So your network will actually see that.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing you can do for them. Then they will get additional visibility. And if you do it regularly, like 2-3 times, then they, whenever you contact them, they know you're this guy who's actually been commenting regularly. And it's a lot easier because you're not just asking, you're providing value by opening, their content to your network.
Yeah, that's why I'm using your tactic with by starting a conversation with thoughtful comments through a guy that I'm hoping to get in week 6. It would be a big win.
Okay.
I'm playing using your playbook.
Yeah. It's really, that's one of the best way to create content is to create comments on people.
Yeah.
That's content because it's comments, and that's the fastest, easiest way to do. And to anyone who's actually afraid of starting to post stuff, that's the best thing I recommend is just doing that.
Yeah, that comes on to, sorry, actually, just a final point on that, and then we'll come on to that topic because that is a big one. I think that you make a really good point, which is ultimately you have to post thoughtful quality content. You can't hack this. And clearly, I think in our case, people, if you're new to a niche area, you don't know it inside out.
Yeah.
So, Thibaut can write something on sales strategy in a couple of minutes, but if you're new to an area, it's going to take time, but you will sort of build that expertise up. But linked to that second point, which is actually my second question, is, a big obstacle that the alumni have found so far is this fear of reaching out, particularly because we're going in, even if we have an offer statement, like we don't have a product yet, and there's a slight fear there. How would you break that down and try and flip that and tell people to really get out there and just try it and see what happens?
So you're asking how people who basically don't feel like experts, how they would actually just go out and post content. Okay, that's what you're asking.
Topic.
So you talk. I think Jack, you're gonna have to unmute. I'm gonna use you as my guinea pig for that.
That's fine.
Cool. What are you doing? What's your product about?
So about in the hiring space, startup hiring space.
Okay, hiring space. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so actually helping founders hire their founding team or their first employees.
Okay, I see. And is there any kind of vertical you're working on, specializing, or?
So helping them to filter them candidates. So from, especially in the market at the moment where they're going to be hundreds of applications for one job because of employment rates. So actually trying to help to filter them and give them the best candidate basically in their lap rather than sifting through hundreds of CVs.
Okay. Do you have experience doing that?
No.
Okay. Why did you decide to do that?
Something I had difficulty with in terms of wanting to get involved with startups and seen a lot of other people who work in maybe large corporates who'd had that difficulty and had that struggle. But then also now speaking to founders who've had, hundreds and hundreds of applications for every job, but not knowing who to hire.
Can you give me 3 points that you talk, come from your founder's talk that are important for them and that kind of drive how you want to build your product?
So reducing time for them. They've often got another job themselves. Understanding commitment. So actually getting people who aren't just telling them they want to be involved, but actually going to be committed to the cause. And finding them people who are adaptable. So not obvious on their CV they do that job, but they're willing to learn and get involved.
Okay, cool. So you see what you have now, you have 3 key points where they are actually sourced from your discussion with founders. And that's one great kind of material for posts. You could say, hey, I'm building this kind of product to solve this problem. And this is what founders typically face. But I'm currently willing to understand what other problems you face as founders. If you are XYZ, I don't know, founder here, what are the, do you see yourself in these points, and what are other points that actually you are facing? And then you tag a bunch of people, or these people you talked already, you ask them, it's fine if you tag them in the post and that they actually comment. Whenever you're going to do that, they're going to comment, the network will see it, some other people start jumping, and you have a bit of virality that can build on that. So, that's how you drive content when you actually don't know or don't have any expertise on that. the best thing you can do is to curate content. And when I say curate, it's not like use something that is commonly kind of referred or whatever and just post it. I don't know if you take a think about Shidi Sales technique, you will actually look for something in the Wolf of Wall Street, cut the video and say, hey, I love this, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't work. In that case, it's more, here are my conversation with these people. I want to expand my understanding of these problems. So please, if you are in this, just share your insights. And whenever you do that, you're going to actually be able to start conversation with these people, to kind of interview them. And then you're going to grab some kind of insights from other kind of people. And then that's going to build your knowledge. And just as a DJ would actually curate music. So what you do when you're DJ, basically you simply find one track, the other one, you mix them together and you build a unique moment. And you do that for hours and that's a set basically. That's exactly the same when you're producing. You're not like the genius that is building the tracks on the spot. You're just selecting different ones. And when you do that, at some point, you're going to get so much inspiration and so much understanding of the market that you're going to be able to build your own track. So build your own content. So give a point of view, give a twist on that. And that's basically what I would do, is just collect data. And then you're going to understand a bit more. You're going to have like a very strong point of view on something. And then you can actually go and run with that.
Perfect. Thanks.
Henry, does that answer the question?
Yeah, very, very well. No, exactly. I think what I'm trying to prove to people is that there's a slight misunderstanding of an expert, I think, where people feel that they need to have 10 years experience in something or have some sort of qualification. But ultimately, if you know the subject area better than the other person, and as you said, you have these three insights that they don't have, like, you are an expert. You can now obviously there is a responsibility to build up your knowledge. So in Jack's case, reading, as we said, Jack, reading the right things, like listening to Adam Grant, for example, who's the sort of king of organizational psychology. You have a responsibility to build up knowledge, but to start, you don't need to know everything. You'll never know everything.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's one thing that is important is the expertise comes out also with, like, you understand first, you have a broad understanding of a lot of things, and then you narrow on your niche, and then you kind of strip out everything you don't know. And then one good thing, actually, I've read from a book, which is called The Business of Expertise from David C. Baker, super cool book. You can do like a list of things that are important, that you want to talk about. You do this list of things, and then you have to develop an opinion that you can just like lightning fast answer on, and it takes years to do that. But as you go, you'll build a certain expertise, and people will ask you, we come to you with this specific question there. And they won't come to you, like for me, for example, if someone says, hey, Thibaut, do you have an opinion on cold calling? I'll say no, because I don't know about cold calling. I've done a bit, but I hate that. I think it's stupid. So I will just not answer on that, because I have nothing to say about it. But if you ask me, on LinkedIn, how to use voicemails on LinkedIn or do videos, I know a lot more, and I'll give you answers on that. And so knowing what you don't know is super important to be seen as an expert. And seriously, you don't need to know everything. And one thing is, it's much better to be known for one specific concept, than just another consultant trying to build a product that can do like some hiring or design or whatever.
Yeah, that's a great point as well that we try and hammer home in like week one is, if you try, if you go for everyone, you get nobody. So
exactly.
I think, exactly. Doing one thing really, really well is a great point. Another question, sort of moving sideways a little bit. One thing that I think has just struck me, and I think is going to be relevant for other people, is talk me through sort of how I feel like there's a misconception of what sales is. Mm-hmm. People think it's, as you said, annoying. What's his name? Guy from Wolf of Wall Street picking up the phone and trying to, con you into buying this thing you don't really want or need. Like, maybe talk me through that. What is sales for you ultimately? Like, what does it really mean?
Okay, so the common misunderstanding about sales is that it's it's like what you see in the Wolf of Wall Street or Boiler Room or Glengarry Glen Ross, which are like typical movies people talk about when they talk about sales. And it shows you this kind of really extrovert, dominant white dude, who's calling over the phone and doing magic just by saying words and pitching whatever. So the thing is, sales is about understanding a problem. So you have a problem, you quantify it, and then you sell something that solves parts of or all of this problem. That's really the idea. And your job is not to go and pitch and convince people. You're never there to convince people. You're there to just qualify them, in a process. So whenever you start a conversation, even if you actually talk with someone, I don't know, who's the CEO of Coca-Cola, or who, you got introduced from another friend, whatever, it doesn't mean because they are there, introduced by a friend, by a network, or they are the CEO of a big company, that they will actually have a need you can, you can solve. So really the idea is just understand in sales is to have kind of a structure and be able to run a good discovery, I call that, where you understand the problem, you give it a value. There's different ways to do that. And then, if you have a 2 million euro problem, you can sell a solution that will solve that for 200,000 euro, for example. And that's really the idea. So that's one thing that is important, is just to understand that your job is not to pitch and talk about what you're doing. So that's something that is important to do at some point. But for that, you really need to really understand the pain, and then you'll be able to show and share what use case your product or solution actually solves. So, I mean, or what problem they solve with which use case. So I don't know, like, I'll take, for example, sales training. So for me, there's different problems I solve for a lot of people. So in sales organizations, often you have like SDRs, who are like people who are doing cold calling, cold emailing. They are often failing because it's a first-time job. They come from a university where everyone's told them that they would be like the new leaders of the world, and then they end up like on their office having to do hundreds of dials every day by someone who's actually has maybe 6 months of experience. And one thing is, they're millennials, so they know how to produce content, to send snaps and whatever, and use their smartphones. But ask them to call their mothers, they don't even do that. So ask them to call strangers, it's even worse. So that's the idea, is that you need to and actually I completely lost why I'm saying this story, but like the idea is that in sales, it's really not about just like convincing people and pitching and talking about that, and it's more understanding how you can move. I'm sorry, I completely lost my train of thoughts.
No, you answered the question. Just about the like sales misconception. I mean, ultimately, I think, as you said, it's changing this mindset from, ultimately they don't care about you, what you're offering. So it's leaving your ego at the door. And I think that's, part of the reason. A key part of good leadership for me is altruism, right? So not egotistical, making decisions for the good of firstly your team, then the customer. So one of the reasons that I think, it's also important in our case that as product people, we are doing this process of reaching out to people with an offer, is that it is, hopefully is the goal anyway, is trying to internalize this lesson that ultimately we're there to serve people. If we do that well, we will generally get paid to do that.
Absolutely.
It's not about it's actually trying to sell something, sell something to somebody that they don't
exactly
need. Linked to that, an interesting topic, I think, from our perspective here as well. This will be my final question, then I'll open up to you guys. Why do you feel? Because, for example, all of us come from product backgrounds, right? So we probably generally experiences that products over here, sales are over here somewhere. Maybe explain to us why you feel that sales why is it perceived badly? Like, why is it the case that in a lot of companies, somebody is on the phone just trying to sell you rubbish half the time?
So, and I mean, when you think about sales, most people think about the used car salesman or insurance salesman. That's the idea. And we all have the idea, either because of pop culture or whatever. And you get this thing of very dominant, white dude who's just like good at just talking bullshit. And then, you like buy something and then you have buyer's remorse. And so that's like whenever a lot of people, when I started in sales, I actually went in sales because I wanted to be this guy. I thought that was pretty cool. And I really recognized myself in that. And I was like, okay, I can be this guy. And I really quickly realized that it doesn't work. Just people hate you for that. There's one type of people, like it's more like predatory than anything else. And so whenever you realize that, you're doing that, people, they hate buying from you. They feel like you sold them. They love buying, but they hate being sold to. And so I think that's why, it's because the conception we have about sales is it's about pitching, it's about convincing people. throwing as much kind of information as we can, and getting them to actually give us money. And so it's I think that's one thing that is why you have this misconception, like people don't really like seeing themselves as salespeople. And yeah, I think that's mostly because of that. And the thing is, at the time, there's a huge shift that happened, in the next few years. Is at the time when you were about selling something, there was a huge asymmetry of information, and the only way to kind of fill this gap, it was to have a sales rep telling you about the something. So selling a house, selling whatever. So the only way to get info was to talk with this person, and so they could manipulate this information to take advantage of you. And now it doesn't work anymore. Basically, whenever someone wants to talk to you in B2B sales or any kind of sales, they already know everything about the features, whatever. They know tons of things, and your job is to help them, guide them in the buying decision process, and be like an advisor. So it's like telling them, for example, you want this thing, this specific product. Why do you want it? And often if you're a good salesperson, you're going to be able to actually question why they want that. I don't know if they want to buy like an MP3, or I mean, that was actually an old example, but like I wanted to buy an MP3, like an iPhone, and the guy wanted to sell me a Sony whatever thing. It was like 10 years ago, and I wanted to go for the iPhone for XYZ reason, but the guy kept pushing his stuff. And so the thing is, a good salesperson goes there to understand what you're trying to achieve, and then they will recommend you the best thing, basically.
Yeah, I think there's also a point from product perspective. A thing that I've observed a bit is that you have some companies as well where you have a crap product. Mm-hmm. So the poor sales team, have to try and sell something that may not make sense. And also, I think a lot of companies, you have this siloing, right, of sales over here, product over here, mm-hmm. that they don't really know. Like, product doesn't know really what the customer needs and what that big sort of promise is. And sales, they're not quite sure, like, what are we offering? What can we promise? It sort of creates this communication, I suppose, which damages results as well.
Yeah.
But awesome. Let's open up for questions from anyone listening in. Does anyone want to kick us off? Just if you turn on your video and audio, if you want to ask a question. Hi, go for it.
Okay. Thibaut, since you just mentioned business development and the connection between, say, sales as being more or less the foreign embassy of the company, communicating into the market, and a product, some kind of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, governing, say, the dev team in an IT company. When it comes to their internal relationship, Henry already mentioned that silo thinking, like two pillars, is extremely harmful. I fully agree. I assume nearly all of us has experienced. But what about the alternative? What kind of tricks and small ideas, incentives could you recommend to have sales communicating towards outside and product managing more or less inside and internal resources, to have those kind of departments march in line in the same, say, direction or reach consensus?
So I'm not a huge expert of, like, I don't have too much knowledge about the internal and, this, how you work, with product. One thing I've observed, I can tell you what I've observed worked well, is, a company I was, we had regular product and sales team kind of meetings where the product team was showing what they were doing to the sales team so they can go and pitch. And so this was just absolute shit, because they were, like the data. So how to say, like there was one thing that was called cohort analysis. I was selling an attribution solution, and this came from founders that had like the understanding that they needed to build this thing to be in par with like the competitor feature. And so they were telling us, pushing this thing and whatever. And so that was pretty bad. So maybe one thing I would recommend, and take my word lightly here, is just it's being able to weekly, or I don't know at whatever frequency, but understand like what the customers or the market is really looking for. And there it's more like you have half of the of the session, which is reps sharing what they know from the market, and product people kind of sharing how they would typically solve that. That's how we do it. But yeah, I'd say I wouldn't be able to say more.
It's really tough. I mean, one thing that we're going to cover actually in week 6 is introducing basically key problem of product managers. The most, you know, when I did an initial survey when we sort of start out with product mastery, 70% of product managers said their biggest problem is aligning stakeholders. Very difficult and depends on every company and context. But one thing that I found that works well, like I ran a workshop with a client last week on this, is what's called a lightning decision jam. So it's taking the design sprint process, which we'll talk about in week 6, and pushing it into an hour. So essentially what you're doing is getting key stakeholders in the room, aligning around, okay, what do we want to, you know, what do we solve next? Like, what's the big challenge we all think we are facing? And moving from, okay, actually defining that challenge very specifically, prioritizing that based on how many votes we give it, and then moving to a solution in 1 hour. So what that does is, you know, it's not going to solve all the problems, but it at least gets all the perspectives in a room and gets consensus around like what we believe makes sense. So that's something we're going to cover in week 6. And actually you guys we'll be running one next Thursday. I'll be running a session with that format to introduce it. And then week 6, you guys will actually be running one of them yourselves. So yeah, Kai, I think my point, Rob Hamblin, who's coming next Friday actually for a talk, he's a great person to talk to about this. He's the king of like workshop facilitation. Not the king, he's very good at it. But that for me is the only thing I've seen really work. It's really difficult otherwise, because also you tend to have competing interests, right? You have, you know, if you're B2B product, maybe you're selling it to the CEO, but ultimately the, you know, marketing team are using the product. It's very difficult, you know, how do you use, let's say, like data from the marketing team, like what they're saying, what they're doing through the analytics, and balance that with ultimately what the CEO wants. So it's a tricky one. And I think simply having a good framework for aligning people with a lightning decision jam is the best way to solve that. Anyway, that different topic. Anyone else for questions? All good? No? Jack, any questions on? Yeah, Kai, feel free.
Nobody else. Thibaut, one question. What was the worst anti-pattern you have ever heard about when it comes to sales? What was the most impressive incident of how not to do sales?
That was a very fun. It was actually with the founder of a company I worked before founding my company, and it was like I was selling in the French market. So French people are very strange people to sell to, because if you don't speak French, it's gonna be tough. And the guy came, and in France, you know, if you go to Paris, you have to. It's better if you are dressed properly. So if you go with your company T-shirt, that's not gonna work. And so the CEO came to Paris and was like, Thibaut, we need to go and see customers, book me meetings. I was like, okay. And they raised tons of millions. They are already a unicorn. And so they have the unicorn mindset. And so he arrived, he said, wear your Branch T-shirt. That was Branch, the company. He wore his Branch T-shirt, and we arrived there. And he started opening his slides and just like selling his shitty vision to the guys at a group called La Poste, which is a super old-fashioned group. And the guys were like, yeah, cool, blah, 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 you know. And then we left. And after I followed up because they ghosted me and they were telling me, yeah, it's great, Thibaut, but like you talked about your stuff like all the time, and we seriously don't need that. We really don't care. So that's one thing, that's the worst thing experience I had in that, is just the guy was so proud and so sure that he was, you know, since he raised millions, hundreds of millions, and he was from the Silicon Valley, he felt so superior that he could actually go and sell the vision, you know. And so just like everyone would be in awe, you know, in front of him. And so that was the example. And that was a key moment where I was like, okay, I don't want to work in this company anymore. Because when the founder comes there and just he cannot understand that someone, you know, his customer who's paying his bills is like, do not give a shit about what he's saying, you know, that doesn't work. And so that was super, super interesting. And I got like a training after from a guy who actually is my mentor now. And he said exactly this, you know, it's just like, you have so many founders who are so proud of what they did, and raising money sounds for them like market validation, which is never market validation. And then they just go and have a huge head. So that was that was something like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think with, I mean, ultimately, like ego, I've read The Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. Is a great book on this topic. But
yeah,
ultimately, anything where you're driven by ego is going to just end badly.
Exactly. And
again, it's blinding you to user feedback. It's blinding you to ultimately like the person you're trying to serve. Whether it's sales or product, you see it. You see it particularly with. I mean, again, this is why I personally I'm not. You see a lot of you meet a lot of founders that have raised investment and then they've sort of ticked box like I'm successful. It's just absolutely fundamentally not the case, because as you said, like unless you have product market fit, you have loads of customers constantly coming back, then you have nothing.
Exactly.
Ego is just going to blind you for that and kill your business essentially. Yeah, it's a good lesson to have. Any other questions for today? I think we've covered a lot already, so no problem if not. Okay, cool. Well, I think we can wrap up there. That was really, really interesting. I learned a lot actually. It was really, really interesting, super insightful. I'm gonna post for you guys in Slack Thibaut's LinkedIn. Thibaut, remember there was a really good webinar you did on LinkedIn, like specific tactics for LinkedIn?
Yeah. You can go from that. I'm gonna drop they're all recording. There's recordings there, ungated.
I think that's really worth watching. It's just a better version of the stuff that I've done.
Yeah, thank you. So I have webinars every week now. So there's already 9 you can watch. Talk about different type of things. But if you follow me on LinkedIn, I do webinars every week. LinkedIn Live also. So you are able to kind of jump in and see whatever I'm talking about. Next week, I'm going to talk about how you build content, actually, with the VP of SEO and content of G2. So yeah, that's pretty cool
as well. And I think also just to tie in, why I wanted to bring you in. I think as we've identified, right, sales is not this separate thing over here. It's ultimately product work. It's about really understanding like who is our customer, what are they looking for, and therefore how do we position ourselves and our offer in between? Because ultimately we can have a great, beautiful product over here, but if we don't know who it's serving and how to actually position that, then ultimately we're not going to get customers who come in and pay for the product that keep our business ticking over. So I think that was a really, really insightful look into like what really sales is. And thanks so much, Thibaut. It was super, super insightful.
Yeah, welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for the time. We'll hopefully catch up when quarantine's over in person.
Yeah.
We'll see. Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Thank you for joining, and I will share this on Slack for anyone that missed it. Cheers, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Ciao.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.